What's up, scholars? Welcome to Geometry Semester 1 online in 2020. My name is Ms. Akin.
My name's Lisa.
And today we are talking about
the building blocks of geometry.
Go.
Wait, was I supposed? All right, so these are the building blocks of geometry. So first we have our point A. A point is just anything. It could be a point in space. It could be a point in my backyard. Next we have segment BC. So for a segment, you just have to make sure that you have your two endpoints. It doesn't go on in either direction, but you can read it whichever way. You could read this as segment BC or CB. When you're labeling it, just make sure that you write a line on top of it so that you're labeling it the correct way. Now we have ray DE. When talking about a ray, you must make sure to start reading it with your starting point. So your starting point this time would be D. You would read it to be DE going to the right. You would write it as a line just going in one direction when you label it. And finally, we have line FG. You can read this as either FG or GF since it goes on forever and ever in both directions. Just make sure to put the two arrows at the end when you label it. All right, so let's suppose that we have 3 points on the same line. In this case, we have line X, Y, Z. Since they're all on the same line, we would consider this to be collinear. You could name this line by saying either line XY, XZ, or YZ due to the fact that they go on forever and ever in both directions. And that is how you would label it.
Go.
All right, so let's say that we have 3 points that are on the same line. In this case, it is points X, Y, and Z. We would call this collinear since they are all on the same line. And you could label this as being line XY, line XZ, or line YZ due to the fact that they go on forever and ever in both directions.
Go.
Now we have a plane. So a plane is a flat surface that continues in every direction. You can name a plane by either a letter that is in the corner. This letter cannot have a point or anything surrounding it. Or you could also name a plane with 3 points that are not on the same line. So in this instance, they would not be collinear. And you can see that by the points M and R. You could name it plane MNR.
Go.
So let's say we have line MN and we wanted to add a point to the middle to make this line MQ. We would now have these 3 points being collinear. If we wanted to put point R to point Q to create a line, we would now have these 2 lines intersecting each other. And we could now say that MQ and R are all coplanar due to the fact that they all lie within the same plane.
One.
So let's say that we want to add another line inside of the same plane. So now this line would be parallel to line MN due to the fact that it will never cross or intersect with line MN. So the way we would write this is line MN is parallel to, you would write this by doing 2 vertical lines in the middle. And then we would say it is parallel to line TS. Never forget to put your line symbol on top of the 2 letters to indicate that this is actually a line and not a segment.
1.
Let's say that line ST creates a right angle with line QR. We would write this with the representation of this little box in the corner, and this is actually a 90-degree angle. When 2 lines join to create a 90-degree angle, you would call these perpendicular lines. So you would write this by saying line ST is perpendicular to, you would write this little symbol, never forget to write your line symbol on the top of the letters, is perpendicular to line QR. All right, so let's say we have ray AB. So we are going to add another ray, being ray AC. And when you have two rays that have the same exact endpoint, you are actually creating an angle. So when writing an angle, you could actually write it to either be angle BAC or angle CAB. Always remember to please write your angle symbol before the actual letters to indicate that you are talking about an angle. All right, so let's say that we have a point and we want to draw every point the same distance from the center point.
Go.
So if we keep doing this and we connect all these points, we will actually have a circle. So the definition that you would use for this is that a circle is the set of all points that are the same distance from the one point. This one point is actually point R. And when you want to talk about the circle, you could actually do it by drawing a circle itself with the point in the middle followed by the letter R to indicate that you are talking about the said circle. So last but not least, we're going to,
Go.
So last but not least, in our building blocks of geometry, we're going to talk about congruent shapes. So in order for shapes to be congruent shapes, they have to be the exact same size and shape. So now let's look at our two examples. So our example on the left, you see two triangles. These are actually the same shape and the same size. So we see that these are congruent shapes. When wanting to write this, you would represent this with the congruent symbol. Now, if we look at our second example, we see that these are both rectangles, so they are indeed the same shape, but they are not the same size, so you would not consider these to be congruent. So to wrap us up today, let's do a really quick review on what we learned. We talked about a point, we talked about a segment, a ray, a line, collinear points. We talked about a plane. We talked about intersecting lines. We talked about coplanar points, talked about parallel lines, perpendicular lines. We also talked about an angle. Remember that an angle is created from two rays that have the same endpoint, in this case being endpoint A. We talked about a circle. Circle is a set of all the points that are the same distance from the one point, in this case being point R. Finally, we talked about our congruent shapes. So congruent shapes have to be the exact same size and shape, and you would represent this with the symbol for congruent shapes.
Nicely done, scholars. You finished your first lesson. So proud of you. I've been Ms. Akin.
And I've been Lisa.
And we'll see you next time.